a number of issues with it being utterly inappropriate and totally unable to meet the needs of a tennis club that's grown and I believe has a very, very strong junior program. I would also remind members that this is an alcohol-free sporting club, so this club does not have at its fingertips the sorts of fundraising activities that many clubs that serve alcohol can. And I particularly am very pleased that this is alcohol-free given its junior membership. It is, sport and alcohol are things that we see all too often in Australia, and it's refreshing to see a small local community club just for the tennis, just for the sporting teams, just for the community. So I urge you to support this. I think this is this has been a long time coming, and I'd like this tennis club to start getting some attention from us and having its club rooms refurbished soon.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. I will point out that it has had a reasonable amount of attention from us. We've got a couple of tennis courts out of us. Councillor Wilkins, I'll give you the opportunity to second the motion.
I'm more than happy to support the
sorry, it's come through to me. Sorry, Di. I'll give it back to you. Before you start, could I register a perceived conflict of interest with this matter?
Yes, second.
So under section 75A of the Local Government Act 1999, I wish to register a perceived conflict of interest. There's a lot of history with applications to my place of employment, being the Office for Recreation, Sport and Racing, through this application. However, I do not believe, given the motion that currently stands, that I do have a actual conflict of interest in this matter, and I'll be staying in the chamber and I'll be voting on this issue.
Cool. Thank you. Councillor Wilkins, you may continue.
Thank you. I proceed to support it, and I concur with everything that Councillor Lemon has said. I'm not being heard.
Councillor Davey, can you turn yours off? Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me. I'll repeat that I concur with everything my co-ward councillor has said. It has been a result that's been a long time in coming. Ever since I've first been on council, since 2003, this has been an important issue that needs to be addressed. The tennis club has been, as has been said, has been in operation since 1927, and it has actually afforded great opportunity for seniors as well as juniors in our local community. We have, as the Mayor pointed out, supported them recently in times past with the new fence around the tennis courts, the new courts, to add to the playing surface, the playing opportunities for people. But I think if we assist them with $100,000 from this council to produce a flexible space for them to have as their new clubroom building, it will be amazing. It will obviously increase opportunities for further juniors to enjoy the opportunity to play in their local council area. And of course, we can kick the rats out as well. Nobody wants to be in a building which is allowing vermin to come in through the cracks in the floor and the walls. I think a lightweight construction, which is, and I would hope that it will be architecturally designed with an engineer's report and a landscape design as well, because that would be what is needed when it comes before the council assessment panel. But I urge you to support this application because it is a matter that's been a long time in coming and it deserves our support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Yes, I do support the application, and it's unfortunate that other funding wasn't available, but I believe that the City of Burnside has an obligation to its sporting clubs in particular. In my view, they form a very strong part or predominant part of what we call community in today's times. So I'm keen to support them, and I congratulate them on the success of their youth program and hope that continues into the future.
Pickett.
A couple of questions, if I may. A couple of things. One on, if I have this right, we're talking about $200,000 as a total project. $50,000 we feel will be required to demolish the current buildings. Are we confident that we can do this, or at least the tennis club can do this for $200,000, given that those two facts are, I think, are facts?
Through the Mayor, at the moment we don't have accurate figures, and should we move forward with the process, we'll be looking to secure those figures.
Okay, so as a follow-up, the risk on it going over 200 sits with who? The tennis club or the council?
Through the Chair, the way the officer's recommendation is written at the moment, it says that the council advised the Glenunga Tennis Club it would be willing to commit funding of 50% up to a maximum of $100,000. So that would be where the limit for council sits.
So it'd sit with the council, or with the club, yep. We would own the building at the end, would we, and lease it back to them effectively? Is that how that would run?
Through the Chair, yes, that's correct.
Right, okay. And one final question. I know when we've discussed Glenunga previously, there was talk about a master plan for the whole site and potential shared facilities for croquet and tennis. Have we abandoned that concept, or where does that currently sit?
Through the Chair, at the moment, discussions with both clubs indicate that there's not an appetite for shared facilities in this location.
I think you'd find that from any club throughout the city. Thanks.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I fully support the concept. I just have a question. Is it intended that the exact same footprint will be used for the building? Was that the intent of the design for the...
Through the Chair, as mentioned earlier, we don't have finalised designs at this stage, but the intent would be to constrain the building to the current footprint, yes.
Okay, I'll just move a slight amendment. As I say, I'm fully in support of this, but I'd just like to move an amendment so that 5 add after clubroom building utilising the same footprint, and that there be a new 6 that water sensitive urban design principles, so WSUD principles, guide the concept design and landscaping, and that no trees be removed. Thank you. And that's just to reinforce that, I mean, it's absolutely much needed development, and fine for a club that supports a lot of our community, has wonderful youth activities, and I just want to see the most optimal design and area where we could have better landscaping and softening, because there's huge expanses of playing space. So I just think it could be a lot softer, and hope that we can get a really good clubroom design out of it so that it's really a lot more comfortable and efficient. So hopefully someone will second that. Thank you.
Councillor Davey, can I ask you to consider your use of the word same footprint? You can use the same general footprint, but you are then putting a very serious constraint on design, and for no reason. We can certainly have the same general area, same general footprint, but I suggest you make it less precise. Okay, same general footprint. Thank you. Councillor Davey has moved that amendment. Can I have a second of that amendment? Being none, then Councillor Davey, your amendment lapses and the original motion remains. Councillor Monteau.
I think that this motion, or the officer's recommendation, is complete. It is forward-thinking. It is finding out what the community want and responding to the need to what the local people who live around that facility are concerned about. I think this is a wonderful club, does great things for both the juniors and a lot of seniors that I know who play at that club as well. Sport is a wonderful thing in terms of community, and you know, when I speak later I want to talk about a bit more about community, but this is an issue of a place that brings people together. Yes, some of them might come out from outside of the area, but that's the same case with every sporting club that we have in Burnside. Nowhere is exclusively restricts or cuts people out, and that's important as well. It's been a long time coming. We did provide money for the courts, and that was good, and sometimes a bit of community grant money. But the issue is this facility, like many of our older facilities within Burnside, needs updating, needs upgrading, and this is the best move in the direction towards doing that. So I commend the officer's recommendation. I certainly will be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Davey, you have a question?
No, Your Worship? Oh, sorry.
Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Worship. I too support this, the officer's recommendations. It's been a long time coming, and I congratulate the club for the effort they've put into to pursuing this, and it's certainly needed. I just have a question though. Was any reason given for the rejection by the Office of Recreation and Sport and Community Recreation for the rejection? I mean, do we know anything about that? And furthermore, since there's been a change of state government, could there be any concomitant approach? No, I'm not suggesting that we hold this up, but any sort of coexisting approach to any support?
Peter's twitching.
I'll answer for the gentleman on your right. It's not the traditional approach, I think, for the reasons for funding from the Office for Rec and Sport not to be given when the decisions are made. Every year, it's my understanding that there are significantly more applications and funding requests than is available through the annual pool. So it's more goes to those projects that meet the criteria or the guidelines from the programme at that time. The administration believed a few years ago that this application would more than likely not be successful through the funding programme, so it's not unsurprising. As it stands, I personally wouldn't be confident to receive funding through that programme, but I can never say never.
Pickett.
Can I just ask another question in terms of what effectively we're doing here is if the motion gets up, is putting our weight behind the $100,000 in the 1920 budget. So it still needs to go through the budget process. It's not a guarantee as such, even. Is that fair to say? Okay, all right. Well, perhaps if I could speak to it, I support the motion. I do have a concern that there's not more clarity around the $200,000 that it requires to do this job, and I do feel that I'm hoping actually it doesn't take $50,000 to knock down the 99 and the 83-year-old buildings or whatever they are. But so I do support it in concept. I feel though that certainly before it did go into an annual budget, then I feel that the council should be confident at that point, if not now, that the amount of money is right, and that the tennis club is able to do the whole job even with just $100,000. Because I'm not convinced that's true tonight. It may be, but there's certainly not anything that's telling that to me tonight. But that said, I think that does, if it does go forward tonight, then that does give a 6-month period or whatever to sort that out. And I think that's crucial, and it is finally considered and locked in for next year. So from that point of view, I'm concerned that we aren't quite there exactly. I feel, while another elected member said it was comprehensive, I don't think it is. I think it is short of that key information. I think the 200 is a sweet round figure, and I'm hoping it's high rather than low. That said, tonight I am happy to support upgrading those facilities. I did go and have a look at them on Sunday. And the photos also in our report don't lie, so I think it is right to make something happen there. So I will be supporting the motion.
Now, I've got you again, Councillor Davey. Is this true this time?
I have another question.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Through you to the CEO, is there any reason to presume that water-sensitive urban design principles couldn't be used in the construction, or wouldn't be used routinely in the construction of a new piece of infrastructure in Burnside? Thanks.
Through the chair, we have a water-sensitive urban design policy which states a number of principles which apply to all buildings and projects that take place.
But without unquestionably, this will be a council project, and therefore we build according to our policies. There is no further debate. Councillor Lemon, you may sum up.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you all for your comments. In terms of the design, we don't have it yet. So the sorts of things like water-sensitive urban design, the footprint, trees, maintaining canopy, landscaping plans will come once we get more into what this is going to look like and how it will work. Also in terms of what the footprint's going to be. It may well be that it's smaller than the current footprint with a greater outdoor area. We don't know yet. And it's not until our staff meet with the tennis club and the community to see what they want and what they need in that area that we will know those things. So I'm very confident that we will meet all our policy, and I'm also very confident that we won't compromise our tree canopy. And I'm confident because the nature of this building is actually that it's a very light footprint, and I think that that's a wonderful thing in that particular area with such an enormous amount of green space and playing space. So I hope you support this. I thank you for your comments.
Thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Councillor Monceau, you've pulled the matter of the Community Grants Program, page 67.
Just find me for the page. I move in accordance with the recommendation, and I just want to make a point about the importance of these community grants, and grateful that the council has supported these in the past, has supported the new policies and the new person who's now in the position of controlling or directing and guiding us. I think I'd like to just make a point also about the importance of this whole community grant scheme in the overall community connections. And I was very, very impressed with the school holiday program. I had some new migrants, like they've been here less than a month, that I was able to show around with what our community has to offer. So I think that's really, really, really important. The library had a fabulous display for NAIDOC week. And I really commend the staff who put that together too, because again, I've made this comment before about the importance of recognising our Indigenous past, and I think that was actually really well modelled in the foyer of the library and the community centre. And I think these clubs, they initially put in grant applications that were not acceptable because they were for capital works, and the council administration worked with these two groups to discuss and the other options that would be more viable and would be more likely to be supported. I thank the other people on the subcommittee who discussed these ideas, and I thank the community connections manager, group manager, for the work that she's done on this. And so I hope that you will support these very commendable projects that these two community groups have put up.
So, I seek a seconder. Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I am very happy to support it, and I do note that it is Clayton Wesley Uniting Church, or United Church. No, I don't have a conflict of interest. I work for the other part of the organisation Uniting Communities, and I don't work in the church, but we do support the area at the back in Uniting Communities. But yes, thank you, Farley, and your team for the work that you've done on awarding or working on the community grants for this particular 12 months. And it's, yeah, I'm really proud that we do actually support small bodies in the community to actually help them put together programs, and actually all of our community buildings and tennis courts are used and well enjoyed by all of the community. So we are supporting them, and the juniors and the seniors in our community. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further debate? There being none, may I put the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. The 14.3, I've looked at our agenda and I'm going to run through 15 and 16 and 17 very quickly, then deal with 14.3 because we'll go into informal session for that if you so choose, and then we'll go into conference, which seems a reasonable sequence of events. So under 15, subsidiaries and other organisations, we have the minutes of East Waste Management Authority Board meeting on the 28th of June. There's a recommendation that those minutes be received. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Move Councillor Pickett, seconded Councillor Ponto. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. There's nothing from Eastern Health, Highbury Land or Era Water. Eastern Regional Alliance, there was a meeting of mayors and CEOs on the 27th of June, a recommendation that the minutes of that meeting be received. Move Councillor Davies.
Could I ask a question?
You may. You've moved it, and you can ask a question, yes.
Is this group, and thank you for the minutes, is this group working on a forward plan for recycling and dealing with developing a whole concept plan?
It is something that
recycling
we are very
issues?
much aware, and it took up a lot of the meeting. It's of course bigger than Eastern region. It's a state. It's certainly a local government matter, and it's a state matter. We're giving it as much attention as we can.
And that's to develop a leadership position for this region?
In what sense?
As the Eastern Region Alliance to give leadership to
Well, essentially we do it through East Waste. That is our avenue, but we give it all the support we can. So move Councillor Davey, seconded Councillor Monceau. Is that you? Is that what you're there for?
I wasn't seconding. I was going to ask a question.
Were you prepared to second it?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Move and second it. Another question?
And in the process, I am concerned at 6.2 about EHA review. I have asked at a number of meetings now that the ERA Alliance actually looks at the role of public health in the way, in terms of prioritising that issue, since it is something that is the responsibility now of all local government councils.
Where are you in the agenda, Councillor?
The very last page of the ERA Regional Alliance, page 4 of it, which is the last page of the book.
Of their agenda, okay.
Yeah, it's page,
okay,
yeah.
Yep, thank you. Yep.
6.2 of their agenda. I'm concerned that there is, and look, I think reviews are important always, so I'm not sort of sounding like I'm trying to support EHA, but my question is still there, that the responsibility for public health is now in the hands of local government. And therefore, it should have an agenda item in ERA Regional Alliance documentation at all of its meetings. I don't have an objection to an EHA review, but that should be part of the ERA Alliance actually understanding more about the role that they now actually have, the role and responsibility that they actually now have under the Public Health Act, with a new public health plan coming out by November this year. So I think this is a kind of a gut reaction without actually looking at the full understanding of the role that all councils have in the provision and the undertaking of public health, of which EHAR is actually held up as a model example of the way regions actually work to provide for the needs of our communities in terms of safety, health and well-being. So that's my only comment, which is also a complaint.
Moved and seconded that the minutes be received. I'll put that, all those in favour? Against, that's carried. There's no council correspondence. Any other business? There being none, then I will now move back to item, where am I? 14.3, which is on page 25 of your agenda, which is a matter that the Local Government Association has asked us to debate and come to a position on, which is whether we support or do not support the Local Government Rates Oversight Amendment Bill 2018. So, at this stage, I seek a motion on this matter, which we can debate, or if someone would choose to go into informal session, you may put that, and I'll see with a show of hands that's what you wish to do. Okay, all those in favour of informal session?
You just need 2/3.
There's more than 2/3 there. We'll go into and let's say for 15 minutes, we can always extend it. So we are in informal session. There's no one has moved the motion, and I'll open the look, at the best I can, I will. Obviously, there was not a balanced for and against there, because the Minister spoke. He spoke well, but he spoke in generalities. Virtually every other speaker, other than John Daly, who sat on the fence, did not support rate capping. With one exception, and that's Councillor Ford spoke for rate capping. And there were one or two others from the floor who did, but there were speakers from Victoria, speakers from New South Wales, where they elected members from those areas where rate capping has been installed, who strongly recommended that we did not go down that path and pointed out a lot of reasons why we shouldn't. There was a professor from Newcastle who makes a speciality of studying local government matters, and this in particular, and she has done a lot of research. I can't quote it, but it's all available, and it was essentially that nowhere could it be shown anywhere that rate capping has had anything other than adverse effect. That's the rough outcome.
Okay, second question. At our last meeting, we discussed the issues in relation to regional country areas versus city. Was there any kind of indication during the debate during the day that the regional country areas thought differently from the city?
No, I'd be very surprised if the majority of councils did not vote against rate capping. And certainly the vast majority of regional ones. I expect there will be one or two recalcitrant metro ones, and we possibly one of them. But I would not expect that to be the general case. One of the speakers was the head of ESCOSA, who on whose head it will be to manage this. He really didn't have the answers. He wasn't even sure of the questions, so he spoke in generalities as well. He did say that he would be prepared to he accepted we have long-term financial plans, which other levels of government don't have. And he said that he'd be prepared to take the long term into account in making these judgments. But the difficulty he faces, everyone faces, each council is different under the circumstances, and long-term financial plans have to make assumptions regarding inflation, regarding other things, and what if he doesn't agree with our assumptions? So he was not convincing on that matter. He hasn't really addressed it, but he just understands it's coming if it does come.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Could I ask, did the minister justify the rationale?
Should we be using these?
Oh, sorry.
Be nice, yeah.
Did the minister justify the rationale for?
I've got to go off.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm happy for Jane to go first. It's just I think we need to get back talking the microphones, don't we? Because we're going out to the world, aren't we? Yeah. So I'm happy that she does that.
Crazy. And then I bail.
Oh, thank you. At the workshop, did the minister just provide a rationale for actually why, the reason for wanting to introduce rate capping?
Look,
is there a rationale?
I have my own. I know a number of people in the Liberal Party. I know a number of the Labor Party as well. I know, and I think anyone knows, that they introduced the policy because they thought it'd be popular, and they thought it might get that last one or two over the line. They hadn't really thought through how to do it. And as I said to them, if you really want to get over the line, say you'll have state members' salaries. You'll win on a gallop. But it doesn't quite work that way. But it was a fairly, it wasn't well, in my view, I'll be careful, it wasn't well thought through. Now they're in, they said they'd do in 100 days, here they are on the 100 days in a gallop. Now they're trying to work out actually what it means. What they also said was that we understand, back in those days, the mistakes that New South Wales and Victoria made, we're not going to do them, but they've got no option, that's the only way to do it.
So does he understand we've got asset management plans and there's been all that reform process, and that we have our 10-year long-term financial management plans?
Well, I presume he does, and I presume Escosa do, and I thought, in fact, the letter written by David O'Loughlin was very good, which was circulated to you quite recently, that it is very unfair to look at councils over the last 10 years because our asset management plans came into being, and we had to build up a security base so that we are fully funded and fully secure. Other state levels of government have never done that, but we have now done it, and it's a fairly unfair swag of 10 years to take. I thought that letter of David O'Loughlin's was very good.
Could I, just a couple of questions. Am I right in saying that it won't be it's not a one-size-fits-all? I suppose when it first came up, it was sort of, it might be capped at CPI across the state and all those sorts of things, but it's going to be an exercise where councils are reviewed individually in terms of what they can work to. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. So the exact methodology has not been released yet. They're still working that out. But preliminary indications are that there'll be a base rate that's allocated to each council, and that's based on almost like an average rate. So it depends on the number of properties you have and the rate revenue, and the percentage cap will be applied to that base rate. So it would be quite, it won't be generic like 5% or 2%. It will depend on the average rates for each council. That's what has been proposed at this stage, but again, the details of it are yet to come out.
Is that the system that runs in Victoria and New South Wales? Or is that that might be tough?
I'm not aware of that.
No. Okay, all right, thanks.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Parkin. I went to the session last Friday. It was quite illuminating, even though I was on the back table. I think Councillor Davey sort of proposed a big question that was hanging around in the room, and that was why? What's the rationale? The professor there at the day said that 15 international studies around the world where this has been introduced has found that it does not provide efficiencies for the local level of government if you do rate capping. So if it doesn't promote efficiencies, why are you actually doing it? What it does do though, SCOSA is going to need another $2 to $3 million to actually set up a unit to assess all of our applications, look at all the different factors that would weigh into what actually is needed to be the actual increased rate. It doesn't actually stop rates going up. It does increase them quite can be quite dramatically in some areas. The other things that I'm really quite concerned about, and Councillor Monceau brought it up, and we all received an email recently where the Mayor of Streaky Bay, and he actually made a personal approach to us. He mentioned that, his council, they've got 2,000 people living in it, holiday periods that can bump up to 5,000 odd people. They have 6,500 kilometres of dirt roads in their area. 6,500 kilometres of dirt roads. And when they go onto someone's paddock to pick up rubble to help build those roads, the state government charges them a royalty fee to do so, even if it's their own land. They charge them a royalty fee to pick up rubble to make their own dirt roads out there. So the last 18 months, they've actually spent $180,000 doing that on their own rubble alone. Taking that even further, they've got to look after out there their own, rubbish dump, their own recycling centre. They've recently, because the local medical clinic and practice out there and hospital looked at closing their doors, they've had to actually purchase that to keep the actual door open for public health in the area. They've also had to undertake a $5.2 million upgrade to their local caravan park to actually keep tourist numbers and local businesses open in the area. This is going to affect them so dramatically in the regions, it's inconsiderable how much it will actually affect them if you actually cap their ability to rate their local communities who get a say. They get a say out there as to what their rate will be.
I think you are debating here, and you're putting...
I'm giving some feedback from the meeting.
We are an informal session. You'll have the opportunity to debate it. Does anyone actually want to ask any questions in an informal session? And then we can actually start debating the issue.
Okay,
you'll get the opportunity in debate to do that.
Just giving some feedback.
I appreciate your feedback, but we're in an informal session, so you can ask questions and then we'll go into debate. Councillor Rossiter.
I move resumption.
Can we, by show of hands, can we enter debate? All those in favour, we start debate. No? Just second? Yeah. Well, I thought that was just by show of hands.
That's only you.
It's only...
So you can just say...
Okay, I can close it.
What's the mood of the meeting?
The mood of the meeting, I think, is we close it and end of debate. So that's what we'll do. And I seek a motion on the matter. Yes, I thought you might have, Councillor Ford. So, sorry, as long as the Secretary's minute taker's got it right, I'm happy. Did you follow that?
Can you say the three again?
Pardon me?
Just because I'm on the...
Oh, yeah. So you'd like me to read it again?
Just
Oh, yes. So after the paragraph that ends, include the following, that the chart on page 34 be placed at 4.1 and 4.2 and 4.3 be disregarded.
So table 1 on page 34 is what you want?
Yeah, that would be it, yeah.
Is he choosing?
He hasn't said that yet.
Is that correct? Table 1? Table 1.
Councillor Ford, you don't wish to make a choice between 2 and 3?
No, thank you. Oh, well, yes, yes, I'll include point 2, that council advise the Local Government Association that supports the Local Government Rate Oversight Bill. Yes, and then point 4 here would become point 3. And then the Mayor be authorised to communicate this position to the LGA through written correspondence by the Friday the 3rd of August 2018. We note the LGA will hold a special meeting to consider the endorsed positions of member council.
That actually should read the LGA board will hold a special meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You wish to speak to that motion?
Yes, sir.
Well, you may speak to the motion.
Thank you, Worship. Well, contrary to every speaker in the room, in the town hall, it seems I do support rate capping, and with certain caveats. I believe, first of all, that the state government does have a mandate to implement this policy. They took it to the election. It was widely discussed. It was widely opposed by the LGA. I don't think that was actually appropriate, but and I don't have any issue with the LGA having raised concerns about it, but I think to take a position was not appropriate. So, although at the end of the day this is going to come down to the vote of independents in the upper house, and it seems to be going to meet a barrier, you know, it does seem to me to be a mandate that has been provided to the newly elected state government. I think that the state government has a right to participate in decisions about council expenditures, because at the end of the day, the state government is responsible for councils. Even the LGA insurance scheme, at the end of the day, after the limit of the indemnities, the state government is the ultimate indemnifier, and we saw that in the Stirling Council bushfires. So I believe that they have a right to have input into this matter. I think also that the LGA should have the right, on behalf of councils, if it evolves this way, to pursue, perhaps even in an ambit way, the matters listed in the chart that I've referred to on page 34. You know, politics is about negotiation. I think the LGA should go into it recognising the mandate, but negotiate the concerns, as Councillor Cornish raised earlier, and people have otherwise raised about country councils and other variables that are in the system. I think that ASCOSA could be tasked with taking a practical and reasonable approach. I think it pushes back to some extent the responsibility for funding adequate resources into local government and the community to the state government. So I think in many ways they're taking on a burden as well. I think that in local government, elected members are in a vastly different position to members of parliament. We come as individuals we don't have the resources for policy determination, for example, that a elected politician has. And, you know, those resources are very substantial in deciding matters, for example, about budgets and debt and the like. So, you know, I think that local government members are not, council members are not equipped to get advice. We have the benefit of advice from the administration, but the administration are not elected members. And so we are handicapped in our resources to adequately examine proposals that come through to us. I mean, at the end of the day, the administration provides a draft budget with a few variations, and you know, I don't think that we have the capacity to take it very far. I think there's a lot of information around about rate capping and controls, and from other states, and I think we and the government would have the opportunity to really examine those issues, and I think that past mistakes in other places have a great opportunity to be rectified and in any implementation of this. So it's with those kinds of concerns that I speak in favour.
I seek a seconder. There being no seconder, then that motion lapses. I seek an alternative. Councillor Lemon.
Yes, I'm happy to give you an alternative. I move that the report be received. Get rid of 2. Put in 3. Get rid of 4. Put in 5. And put in 6.
And 6 again reads that held a special meeting of the LGA board. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
So essentially
do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So essentially what I'm proposing here is that this council opposes rate capping. And there are a lot of reasons. A lot of them have already been raised in the questions that we've asked and in Councillor Ford's attempt to support rate capping. One of the things that really bothers me about this is that the whole rate capping scenario to date has been exactly overwhelmed by generalities. None of us have any sense of what the particulars are. The current government doesn't have any sense. ECOSA doesn't have any sense. The LGA doesn't have any sense. None of us know how this is going to work. And that really bothers me a lot, because what really needed to happen, I actually think there are a lot of councils that wouldn't be unhappy to sit down with the current state government and talk about cutting costs for its ratepayers. But I actually think that was a conversation that was never had, because as the Mayor pointed out earlier on, this was low-hanging fruit in an election campaign. And here we are 100 days, more than 100 days later, with a bill to be implemented, and none of it's actually gone through any sort of consultation process. What I'd love to see is for the state government to sit with councils, not necessarily the LGA, but the LGA and councils. I'd like to see the Minister come and talk to councils about the sorts of things that we can do to actually cut costs. I'd like to have that conversation so that we could go forward collaboratively with the state government to do the right thing for our ratepayers and our citizens in this state. It's quite true. We exist as an instrument of the state government, and I'm pretty sure that they could do all sorts of interesting things should they so desire. But really, we should collaborate. The Mayor mentioned earlier on Lachlan's email to us. And O'Loughlin says in his email to us that local government taxes comprise only 3.6% of all taxation revenue. But state taxes total 16%. If we actually want to look at really cutting costs to your average struggling person in South Australia, let's collaborate, because I'm sure we've got some good ideas that the state government may be wanting to implement in terms of cutting costs to households. The other thing that really bothers me about this is, well, the main thing that bothers me is that there's been no collaboration with the sector at all, nor with the elected members within the sector. And we've got some pretty heavy-hitting elected members who crisscross through the city of Burnside. None of them have come to talk to us, and they should, because it's their electorate that's going to be affected by this. But the other thing that bothers me is that the waste levy increased by 15%. Again, I think earlier this year we had an email from the past president of the LGA saying that the solid waste levy has gone up in the last 10 years, I believe, something like 1,018%. So that's just been done, and nobody really knows about that because it comes to people through our rates in an odd sort of way. Our rates have to go up to accommodate those things. The NRM levy has gone up by 9%. We also collect that on behalf of the state government. And I haven't seen anything specific about how, as a community, as council, and as state government, we're actually going to deal with the fallout from the China sword implementation. What are we going to do with that? We haven't sat down and had that conversation. What we've had is people talking about things 5 and 10 and 15 years from now. I actually think we need to sit with state government and work collaboratively on all these issues in terms of cutting costs, not just we're going to cap rates and everybody's going to have an extra cup of coffee in their pocket, should they so desire. I don't think that's using a blunt instrument and bludgeoning. I actually think this requires a lot more finesse and collaboration, which is why I'm opposing this. But I'm not averse to having that conversation.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Davis.
Yes. I believe that, the idea of rate capping is quite an easy one. It's quite an easy prospect for anybody to grasp, but the equation that we go through and the considerations that we, those discussions that we have leading through our budgets are actually incredibly complex. And over the past number of years, we've looked at that in detail. We've looked at our services, what we supply. We've looked at our assets and what we need. And at the end of the day, it's an equation. I use that word equation because that has a set answer to it. There is very little flexibility from our point of view in terms of what we actually provide. And the vast majority of our core services, such as rubbish collection, roads, footpaths, the library, there's no discretion there. There's absolutely no discretion. The only thing that we can do is just stop providing them. So in many ways, I feel like the idea of rate capping is similar to the quandary that was posed in Life of Brian when John Cleese asked the question, what have the Romans ever done for us? What has council ever done for us? And yes, apart from roads, parks, stormwater collecting, stormwater collection that we're collaborating through Era Water, the library, building of new sporting facilities as we saw tonight, lettable spaces such as the ballroom, development application processing, which we do as part of a state government legislation. We support the Burnside Youth Concert Band and through funding. We plant trees, we run vaccination programs. Yeah, apart from all those things, yes, council provides you very little. Now, there has been some very high-profile examples of waste, and you see that in the media, and they say, there's some council and they got a membership to a golfing club. Well, yeah, sure. You've also seen state members fly to India with their children. We've seen in federal parliament other examples of waste. Sure, they're the high-profile things. But are you actually going to sit here and say that, no, the money that you're spending on your footpaths, which are millions of dollars, not hundreds of dollars, millions of dollars, is that a waste? Because that's what's actually going to change our budget. So it's very easy to be critical when you have a high-profile expenditure, which isn't justified. And it's very easy for the Liberal Party, for example, to point out those things such as, wasted expenditure on a trip to India, bringing your family with you. Yes, that's a wastage, but it's not going to change the bottom line of your budget. It's not going to change billions of dollars of expenditure. There are only really, as far as I can see it, 3 outcomes that rate capping will have. There's only 3 outcomes that this policy will achieve. And that's 1, a degradation of community infrastructure. You're going to see the Glenunga Tennis Club fall apart. They've already got cracks in there. If we had rate capping, we probably wouldn't have approved it tonight. That's going to get worse. They're not going to get a new infrastructure. Kingston Gardens Reserve, those sporting facilities, they're not going to get new infrastructure. We're not going to get a new pool. So we're going to see our assets degrade. The second thing is we can go into more debt. Lots and lots of more debt. So if we want to continue to provide our current services, we can go into more debt. Or thirdly, we can reduce our services. For example, if there's a development application that comes through here and it's non-complying with the Development Act, let's not litigate it. Let's just let them not comply. Let's not enforce our statutory obligations. Let's not worry about dog and cat management. Let's stop running cases against people who don't comply with the Development Act. Just let them do whatever they want. And those are the only 3 outcomes: degradation of community infrastructure, increased level of debt, reduction in services. And I say that very confidently because there is no honeypot that we can crack open and say, oh yeah, okay, all right, here's $1 million worth of expenditure. Here's $1 million that, yeah, okay, we can just cut that really easily. In fact, this council has gone through, over the last 4 years, numerous processes looking at our service levels. We've had consultants come in and say, what services could you potentially cut? We've had numerous reports on that. And we've also looked at how we can generate more income as well. And the conclusion of it was there really isn't that much we can cut. So unless you want to go and cut computer terminals in the library, if you want to stop the toy library, if you want to cease funding of our community grants program, let's stop that. Let's stop funding Glenunga. Let's stop funding Dulwich. Let's stop funding everything. Then sure, I'm sure we can comply with this. But the best thing about your council rates is that when you pay $1 in council rates, it's going to be spent next to you. If you spend $1,000 here, it's not going to pork barreling some marginal electorate somewhere for the promise of some new sporting fund. It's spent here. It's spent on your pool. It's spent on your roads. It's spent on your footpaths. So out of all of your tax dollars, all of the tax dollars you pay, whether income tax, capital gains tax, stamp duty, your council rates have the best impact. You get the best bang for buck directly to you. If you spend $1 on your income tax, it could go to the military. It could go to buying new Z cars in Canberra. Your council rates go to you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Your time has expired. And Mr Hartley and Mr Jacobson, if you wish to carry on a conversation, please leave. Please do not speak another word, otherwise I'll ask you to leave. Thank you. I will ask you to leave.
First of all, I absolutely endorse what Councillor Lemon has said about the lack of consultation and collaboration. I do acknowledge what Councillor Ford has said about they do have a right to influence and guide us, but they also manage to dump more and more and more responsibility onto us. Yes, we have a responsibility in relation to debt, but that is balanced out, as far as I'm concerned, by the fact that this has been stated already in this council, that rate capping, the first thing that will be affected with rate capping in this council would be to reduce community services. And community services are so essential to the health and well-being of our community. In Australia, we have 1 in 6 children with mental health issues. We have 1 in 20 16-year-old girls who've tried to commit suicide. These are real human issues that are much, to me, more important than roads, rates and rubbish. However, if I lived, and I've just recently been up in the Flinders Ranges and seen the problems for councils like the Flinders Ranges Council with its hundreds, thousands of kilometres of dirt roads, the poor, the disadvantage those people have in relation to health services or quick immediate transport to the city or to that we take for granted here. Forget about footpaths. In regional areas, they have huge issues with transport, with education, with even getting teachers to want to go to many of these country areas to work. I've attended a lot of meetings with with lots of different councillors and council employees and councillors, mostly they've been employees, who talk about the concerns that they have for public health since the state government has put the responsibility for public health onto local government, and without any dollars. These are additional stresses and strains for each of the council administrations to be able to produce, have the staff to do all the jobs that the Public Health Act require them to do. We are expected as council to find solutions for things like squalor, hoarding, mental health issues, providing appropriate community facilities, helping people to belong, introducing new migrants. We need to provide open space for spiritual as well as environmental well-being. We need to keep trees and maintain trees. We have to do all of these things, and yet the government want to say to us, we're going to stop you raising your rates. So the first things that are going to go are going to be those things that do most for people, and that is those things that affect the sense of belonging, the sense of community, the mental and physical well-being, the cutting down of the sports clubs, like we heard earlier talking tonight about the importance of that. That is one example of thousands of sporting clubs within South Australia that provide essential services. In the country, they are dwindling in number. They can't even get a local football or a netball team together anymore. So the community spirit is dying in those towns, as well as, of course, the whole state is suffering a dwindling in terms of its population. This all has a direct impact on the kinds of things that we can do as councils, and yet the government, and this is just speaking through my knowledge of public health, which is probably greater than any other area at the moment, is that huge responsibility in the new the Public Health Act and the new documents that are coming out, they still reinforce the responsibility. They're still going to come back to say it's our responsibility to do all these things, but there's no money coming from state government to help any councils provide for those. Even resources for something like the sport and recreation things. We know already that it's only the areas of low, and they're deserving of low socioeconomic who get the priority, or swinging seats where they actually get the money for development of facilities. So it's all political, and I think that we must support the LGA with this going against rate capping, and I'm ever so thankful that we do have independents in the Senate who hopefully will be able to mount the right sort of decisions when it comes to the time.
Thank you, Your Worship. President. No. Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with all of the comments made by Councillor Lemon, Councillor Davis and Councillor Monceau. I too acknowledge, sadly, the lack of consultation and local government engagement in this whole process. I think it's been abysmal. And I'll quote from David O'Loughlin, our president's, the Local Government Association president, who has made a very good statement in opposition to this proposal. He said that the government have justified their position by quoting rate increases over a 10-year period. So they've used that as a benchmark. They fail to acknowledge the long period of adjustment that local government had to make following a review in 2006 into its financial sustainability. And this found that many councils were unviable and poorly managed, but in response, there's been a whole process of developing asset management plans and funding these with long-term financial plans. So we're all forced to do this. It's an incredible exercise, but it really works in terms of how we cost our services and proposals, and how we project those and plan for them. They also ignore the harsh reality that if councils had failed financially, then the state would have been obliged to step in, and it wouldn't have been cheap to bolster up local government. If this proposal is about reducing the tax burden, as we've been told, local government taxes comprise only 3.6% of all tax revenue in Australia, as Councillor Lemon has told us, and state taxes total 16%, impacting households and businesses over 4 times more. South Australian government expenditure is close to $20 billion a year. Local government sector's expenditure totals only around $2 billion a year, and our average residential rates are amongst the lowest in the nation, despite receiving amongst the lowest state and federal grants in the nation. If the government's motivation is to reduce the cost of living or the size of the tax burden, local government seems an odd place to start. How is a statewide rate cap going to account for the huge range of different council needs? Some have an airport or airports and other major revenue sources that offset rates for residents. Others have coastal beaches and ranges, huge road networks, and some have few rateable properties to provide revenue. Some receive large federal grants, others very little. Some have coastal erosion issues, others have flooding or bushfire risks. Some are growing in size and need additional facilities very quickly. Others have aged infrastructure and facilities and no way of funding replacements. How can one size possibly fit all? Many variations will be sought and justified if this goes ahead. And this has proven to be the case in the systems in place in or the decades-old New South Wales rate pegging system, where individual councils were forced to spend tens of thousands to justify alternate rate rise requests, only to have only 90% of requests routinely approved. Why? What is the point? Other than employing more public servants to prepare submissions and others to assess them, costing local and state taxpayers more, exactly contrary to the original intent. Nationally, apparently our colleagues in Queensland and WA are concerned that if a third state succumbs to rate capping, it will be seen as the trend to follow, and local governments everywhere will simply be outposts of the state. Local government means decision making. If locals want more, then let them elect people who will do more. If they want less, let them elect people who will do less. Localism is the cornerstone of a healthy community and a healthy democracy. Rate capping will add red tape, employ more public servants, centralise power, and undermine local decision making. Members of a SCOSA will be appointed by the state. They will not be elected by locals, nor will they be accountable to local communities. So I think we should vote this proposal down so we can and not support this at all, so we can resume doing what South Australians really want, which is local communities, local decision making, local democracy, and keeping local taxes as decisions for local people.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Parkin, and thank you, Councillor Davey. That actually probably sets me up perfectly for where I was going to start off. I was very surprised with this policy platform going into the election, primarily because it's such a socialist policy platform. And I was surprised that the Liberal Party would actually support such a socialist platform where you're effectively capping local communities' decisions. You're capping what they want, their decisions in their local community. You're capping the development in a local community because you want to have that power. And from the Liberal Party, that was from the outset. I thought that was quite startling to actually get that from the Liberal Party in this state. Getting on to a SCOSA, and I've said this before, and Councillor Davey just mentioned it, it's going to be quite a large bureaucracy that's going to have to control this. So councils are going to have to come up with between $40,000 to $250,000 to put in an application. If 95% of those applications are approved, that's a lot more ratepayers' money down the drain just to put in an application to get a little bit more money through the rates, which, by the way, currently in our structure, maybe not New South Wales, maybe not Victoria, but we have to legislatively consult the ratepayers on what the increase should be in the rates. We do a pretty good job. We get quite a lot of feedback from ours. We don't have one poxy little meeting. We do a lot of work and we actually get quite a lot of information for what our community wants and what they're prepared to pay for it. So there's some of those things. From the meeting, I thought Mayor Traynor from the city of West Torrens actually said something very important, that councils build streets. Those streets turn into suburbs, those suburbs into neighbourhoods, and that's your community. You start capping councils to being able to actually do those sort of things, you're losing your local community, you're losing your local identity, which is, once again, a very socialist policy, I thought. Getting on to the fees. If we're going to cap our rates, I certainly agree that the state government should be. And Councillor Lemon did say that the waste levy from 2004 to 2018, so the last 14 years, has gone up 1,900%. That's our landfill tax that local councils pay and is actually put into the rates that we collect. 1,900% increase, from $5 to $100 per tonne in the last 14 years. It didn't get capped this year. It was 15% from 1718 to 1890. 15% increase. So not the cap that they're going to provide. And on top of that, we've got the NRM levy. 9% increase, which we also have to put on our rate notices. Collecting taxes for the state government. It doesn't come to us, it goes to the state. I'm just absolutely appalled at how they can possibly think that at the lowest percentage of tax collection in this state should be limited the most, considering the wastage that possibly goes in everywhere else. You know, you just have to look at North Terrace and the dining room that they get. But I won't go into those. Mayor Parkin at the meeting actually raised quite an interesting point, is that any council would be an absolute mug if you actually increased your rates less than what ESCO's has set the cap at. Potentially you could. You look at North Payneham St Peters, their increase this year is only 0.65%, not 4%. They've been able to do it. They've made some big wins and they're doing some different structures over there. But they'd be a mug if they were doing that if a rate increase comes in, because it's going to be compounding effect for them. So they'd be increasing it to the actual cap. Why would you do any less? The state government's picking the rate for you. You're not actually doing the work for your local ratepayers. Why would we even make that decision? Why would we go out to consult our community on what rate rise we should do? The state government's setting that, and they're setting it 3 months before we even go out, well, probably not 3 months, but 2 or so months before we even go out to community consultation. Why would we even bother? So I absolutely and utterly support this motion. I don't think rate capping is something this state should entertain. We're not New South Wales and we're not Victoria, where the party system has infiltrated the local government system, and they use this as an issue to stop all the bickering between the party members and the different layers of government. I rest my case.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Cornish. Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'm very happy to support this motion, and thank you, Councillor Cornish. For me, local government means local decision making. Stuff the Liberals on this matter, says this Liberal. We have been, in my time in local government, we have been, I think, very prudent in the way we go about setting our rate and balancing our operating expenses with our capital expenditure. I don't want, and nor do probably most 99% of my residents, want to live in a community that is not supported with facilities that they can use, programs that they can participate in, areas that they can feel safe in. Who wants to live in a community like that? We don't provide that. We provide the other end of the scale, and which is, as everybody knows, everybody wants to come and live in the Eastern Districts. I was really surprised at the meeting, the primary rate cap. I mean, why is it necessary when we have the local government price index that we work to with our rate determination? The other thing, the variations. If you want to seek a variation, What a waste of money to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to convince another bureaucracy, i.e. ESCOSA, that you should be able to have a rate variation to do that capital infrastructure spend. Bullshit. It's not necessary. It is another level of bureaucracy that we do not need in this state. We've got how many tens of thousands of people working in the public sector now. We do not need any more. I've been a ratepayer in a Mid-North Regional Council. I know how important money that rates bring to the regional councils for roads, for community infrastructure in those towns. Terribly important. Our whole purpose has been about providing a community that people want to live in and provide the facilities that they want to use. And I don't think that they're going to achieve this by introducing rate capping. And I'm also disappointed that they didn't bother to speak or communicate or engage with anybody before this was introduced. But now they've given everybody the opportunity to put their point of view. I urge everybody to put their point of view to the Marshall Liberal government. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Ford.
Well, thank you, Worship. Yeah, it's unfortunate that many people didn't attend the meeting of the LGA last week because they would not sort of resort to this hysteria and paranoia necessarily. I think we heard quite clearly...
Mr Jacobson, I'll have to ask you to leave, please. You are interrupting the meeting. Please leave. You are interrupting the meeting. Will you please leave?
I'll leave only because I've heard nothing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because let's face it, you guys don't even know how you...
Thank you. Will you leave?
I am leaving. Thank you for this. Yeah, just absolute nonsense. Completely out of control.
Well,
just wait.
How many old people are you going to send completely out of their homes, you ridiculous people? We need good people like you, June, to run for election.
That's enough. Thank you, Councillor Ford.
Be defeated yet again.
Could we have Councillor Ford be allowed to start again?
Yeah.
From the beginning, please?
Yes, well, again, Your Worship, I think that there's a great deal of a misunderstanding. Well, you know, Your Worship, maybe we ought to clear the room of a few other people if I'm going to be interrupted. But, it was explained that it's early days. There's room for negotiation, and the LGA has certainly indicated some very relevant matters in the chart that I alluded to before. You know, I think people don't realise, I mean, from a position of opposition, the current government, whom I'm not a spokesperson for, let me say, I'm not a member of the Liberal Party, but they have put forward their position for at least 2 years, and the LGA has used public money to oppose it. I think it was reasonable for the LGA to put forward concerns, but not to put a position in the way that they did. I think that you can't really negotiate from opposition. It's going to always take getting into government with the main policy and working it through after that. I mean, if you look at the responsibility of governments, state government, for example, in the hospitals, community hospitals, they don't allow the board of a country hospital to run carte blanche with its budget and do whatever they wish. And similarly, it should apply to to councils. You know, I heard that countries, areas are bereft of all sports facilities, and the situation is in a great state of disrepair. Well, and I've also heard that this rate capping is going to increase debt. Well, I think that what people who are saying those things are doing is speaking against the current system. If it's so bad, then I think you've got something to explain. And as for debt, well, here's Burnside Council right up against a major marker of debt. Our debt and our net financial liabilities ratio is 46%, and in the 10-year plan rising very soon to 51%. Now, as I've said before, that is beyond the pale for a developed council. It may be fine in a developing area where your income's going to gradually grow to repay the debt, but we are leaving our next generations with 20 years of debt. And the long-term financial plan that was alluded to, if you examine that, you will see that that document has a major fault at year 22, and I don't have time to explain it to you again if you haven't seen that. So I think that with certain caveats, again, rate capping can be effective. I think it needs a caveat of debt involved in it as well. I think there is room for negotiation. I think at the end of the day, the government has a mandate. It was widely disseminated before the election. It's well known, and it is supported for, I mean, the participation rate of in council elections is extremely low. So I don't think I would build too much on the contribution of ratepayers to decisions in local government. When we have budgetary meetings, we're lucky to get 20 people. If you remove the elected members and the administration from the room, there's probably less than 10. So I don't think that the community is going to complain about some control of local government by the state government, and so I oppose the motion.
Davis, you have a question?
I do. Could the administration, well, through your worship, I understand that there was a motion previously moved by this council which was unsuccessful, calling that the rate increase of this council be almost at 15%, a rate increase of 15% to pay down that debt. Who was it that moved that motion to consider a huge, massive rate increase for the city of Burnside?
I've forgotten, Councillor Davis. It was pretty immaterial to me, but does someone else remember? No, can't remember.
Your worship, I object to that in the strongest terms. You show me where I ever moved 15% rise in rates. I think...
the matter is not being debated.
Well, it should be, because that is a lie.
Thank you. I thank everyone for their comments. It's been very interesting to hear what you've all got to say. One of the things that I did think about after Councillor Davis gave us the three scenarios, and that was debt, cut service, or watch our infrastructure crumble, there is something else we can do. And in Burnside, we could do it really, really well. You know, we've got the most expensive land per square metre pretty much in a city metropolitan Adelaide, wouldn't you say? Everybody nod, yes, possibly? So, well, but Burnside would be worth a lot more per square metre, and people do really, really want to live here. Well, we want to keep our rates base up. What we need is more people. And how do we get more people in here? Let's bring in the high rises. Let's just bring them in. We can do that.
That's what
we can do that. We can have an extra 15,000 people living on the 11th floors of buildings everywhere and have this fantastic rate increase. Of course, what will happen is that we'll lose our community. You won't have neighbourhoods anymore. What you've got is people that are invested in real estate, and ask any Sydney-sider what that's like up and down their street of high-rise, and in Melbourne too for that matter. What you won't have is the volunteering rates that we've got in South Australia, and most particularly in Burnside, which is the highest in metropolitan Adelaide and the highest rates in Australia, in South Australia. So I think if we're going to preserve our communities, and we're going to preserve our communities as healthy places for all age groups and people from all walks of life to live, we actually have to keep local government local, and we have to preserve the communities that we already have. We also need to make sure, and I'm surprised again, and I'll make this as my final comment, I'm surprised the current government doesn't care more about the regions. It's usually a Labor government whose sphere of influence doesn't extend beyond Jepps Cross because they really don't care about the rest of South Australia. I don't believe that's the case with this government. I actually believe what we're looking at here is something that was promised and has been ill thought out, and I fervently hope that when it gets to the upper house, it will die a quick death.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Division's been called by Councillor Ford. All those in favour, please stand. Those in favour are Councillors Osterstock, Monso, Lemon, Wilkins, Davis, Piggott, Davey and Cornish. Those against, Councillor Ford. Motion is carried. We now move to the confidential areas of our agenda, and where are they? Where do I go? Where am I?
Back to the beginning.
Yep, I'm lost.
All right. Sorry.
Well, if you'd like to have a break, you're welcome, but I don't imagine these are going to take very long at all. That's my guess.
Do you want to just do that one first? Do you want to do the second one first, with them we're all here?
Okay.
Because otherwise you all have to go out.
and then come back, yeah.
That makes sense.
What I suggest is that we do 18.2 now, which is the Brownhill-Keswick Creek, which I believe will be quite quick, and then let's see where we end up. But so for the, everything's in confidence. Well, we need to move into confidence, and pursuant to Section 92 of the Local Government Act, Council orders that all members of the public be excluded, with the exception of the elected members of the City of Burnside, the CEO, the General Manager Corporate Development, the General Manager Urban Community, Principal Executive Officer and Group Manager People and Innovation, on the basis that we'll receive and consider an item 18.2, appointment of members to the Brownhill and Keswick Creek Stormwater Subsidiary. And the Council is satisfied that pursuant to Section 93A of the Act, that the information to be received, discussed and considered in relation to this agenda item is information that would involve the unreasonable disclosure of information concerning the personal affairs of any person living or dead. The information concerns the expressions of interest, documentation, contact information and resumes of individuals who have applied for positions on the board, and it would be inappropriate to release such information prior to the appointments being finalised with agreement breached by all constituent councils. Further, the principle that the meeting be conducted in a place open to the public has been outweighed in the circumstances because the public interest in maintaining the confidentiality of the personal affairs of these persons. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Move Councillor Lemon, seconded Councillor Piggott. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. We are in confidence. You have a question?